Well, paramedics to a Dothan hospital after they came in contact with fentanyl. Cottonwood police and EMS responded to the overdose call, and that's when they began having some bad reactions. Police Chief Tony Money collapsed on the scene. That's when an ambulance rushed him to emergency care. And soon Cottonwood's public safety director, Jim Smith, and an EMS worker began feeling bad. While both the EMS technician and Chief Money were treated and released, Smith stayed in the hospital overnight.
This is unusual. We took the typical appropriate precautions. Had we known that it was airborne, we would have been in protective mask or self-contained breathing apparatus to end up with a number of people contaminated and symptomatic is very unusual. Had we not had immediate medical treatment, both on scene and then we were fortunate to have advanced life support from Dothan Fire intercept us, and then at the emergency department, then definitely could have been a bad outcome.
It is unclear the condition of the woman suspected of overdosing.